Thanksgiving has always been my favorite holiday, despite me hating the cold and the snow. Yes, I know, why do I live here? Growing up, it was always the same. Thanksgiving dinner at my great grandparents' house with my entire big family. My world was perfect. As I started getting older, so did my grandparents. My Grandpa Bill was my best friend, and this is the story of his death. He was my biggest supporter in everything that I did. He was my biggest fan. He was so happy, so carefree. After my grandma took a headfirst fall down her cement basement steps, it took a toll on everybody. After a completely shattered femur, 17 stitches in her head, it was really a miracle that she lived, being an 80-year-old frail woman. Soon after this, we were forced to move her into a nursing home. This affected my grandfather the most. He and my grandma were married for 66 years. Yes, 66 years. They were the one real true love that I have ever seen close. So you can see why this was extra hard on my grandfather. My mom began to work for my grandpa, and I started spending more and more time at his house. I would walk his dog, listen to all his interesting stories from the past, the present, and even what he thought about the future, and I would just enjoy his company. He would always tell me, "Your name is going to be in lights one day, love." No one has ever believed in me as much as he did. I would go to his house every day at 3 o'clock after a long school day. In the summer, I would go there almost every day and watch the birds with him, or just sit around and talk and watch TV with him. We just enjoyed each other's company. In August of 2011, the tables turned unexpectedly. I was beginning my freshman year of high school and began to have tennis practice, followed by cross-country practice 5 days a week. I spent all of my free time with my friends. I didn't have, or I should say I didn't really make time to go over there and visit my grandpa as much. On August 15th, as I was laying in my bed after a long, hard practice, the phone rang. It was my grandma, which is my great-grandpa's daughter-in-law. She was crying. The call came from his house, so I knew right away without her even saying anything what had happened. She asked for my mom, but my mom was at an appointment, and my grandma hung up without saying anything. 2 minutes later, my mom's friend Stan knocked at my house door and said we needed to go for a ride. We got in the car and headed towards my grandparents' house. I knew what was going on. As we pulled into my grandpa's driveway, there was an ambulance, 2 cop cars, and probably 4 other cars that I recognized that were close friends and family. I knew my feeling was right for sure now. Stan directed my sister and I to the backyard where my older brother, godmother, and others were sitting. Everyone was crying, and despite my godmother trying to stop me, I ran into the house through the back door. As I entered the kitchen, I saw my grandpa. He was laying on the floor, blood coming from his head, with 3 paramedics around him, my mom wailing while holding his hand, and my grandma standing afar with a straight and pale face. That was the moment that I realized that this sick world was not perfect. This world was far from perfect. I had so many questions, but I just turned right back around and ran back outside into my godmother's arms. She knew not to say anything and just let me lay in her arms. She knew that I wasn't a crier, and this made her cry even more. The rest of the night is a blur, and I blocked most of it out. I stayed up all night with my mom, and she explained to me how my grandpa was walking out of the bathroom, went into cardiac arrest, and as he fell to the ground, he hit his head really hard on the door handle of the closet in the hallway going into the kitchen, and this is what caused the bleeding. My grandma went into his house to do his pills like she did every Thursday, and she found him on the ground. The doctors did tell us that it was most likely a quick death, which gave us a little bit of peace. One of the worst parts of this night was going into the nursing home with my mom and telling my great-grandmother what had happened to her husband. She was beside herself, and I couldn't even bring myself to stay in the room. The funeral was a blur as well. My grandpa was a small-town singer, and he sang at funerals and weddings around the area, as well as churches. When we went through his will, we were both surprised and saddened that he had made a tape of him singing that he wanted played at his funeral. This was the hardest part for my family and I. Hearing my deceased grandfather sing at his own funeral was very upsetting. We also found a tape that he made from when my grandmother would pass away of him singing. We knew it would be difficult for us, but it was what they wanted, and we respected their wishes even though it was bittersweet. Their dog passed away 6 months after that from cancer. The dog was so close to my grandpa and got sick only 1 month after he left us, and then we were forced to put him down. My grandmother passed away 7 months after that. My great-grandfather was the first person who I was very close with to pass away. Although I miss him, as well as my grandfather and my grandmother so terribly, knowing that my grandparents and their dog are all together right now brings me a calming sense of peace, and I will forever be grateful for the 15 years I was blessed with